Let's see if we can finish Little Bear's Need, which is the 6th chapter of The Key to the Indian. Omri and his father woke up in the middle of the night realizing that they needed something of Little Bear's to get to his time. They still haven't gotten the key from Jessica Charlotte, but the metal key that they gave her has turned to plastic, so they are pretty sure it went back with her. Little Bear gave them his wampum belt and says that his wife can make toy versions of them in his time. And this is the first time Omri's father has realized that they will be tiny when they get to Little Bear's time and place. And his dad is pretty scared about it. Things got tricky the next day. First of all, of course, there was school and no getting out of it, and Omri's dad had things to do. A man arrived early to pump out their septic tank. They had one because the cottage wasn't on mains drainage. It was a large tank buried in the garden with a flower bed on top of it, into which all the wastewater from the house flowed. His dad had explained to them solemnly that there were little bugs, bacteria living in there that devoured any nasty solids, reducing them to a sludge, while liquids soaked away into the surrounding earth. The boys all thought this was hilarious in a disgusting sort of way. Anyway, the sludge had to be pumped out every so often, and today the man came to do it with a vast tanker truck that stood in the lane while something like a giant hose was poked through the hedge across the lawn and down into the tank through a manhole. The tanker was pumping away with a loud roaring noise while their father and mother stood watching when Gian and Omri set off for school on their bikes. Omri felt a renewed sense of guilt for making Gian feel left out the day before, so he decided to chat as they rode along. It took an effort because he would rather have stayed silent, dreaming and planning and trying to imagine ahead. "Did you do something about the camping trip?" he asked. "Sure!" shouted back Gian, who was slightly ahead, flying along beside the high Dorset hedges. "I got the mag after school yesterday, and I've been making a list of—" His voice faded as he sailed round a corner in the middle of the lane. The next second there was a screech of brakes, and the unmistakable metallic clashing sound of a bicycle coming to grief. Omri automatically swerved in tighter to the edge of the narrow lane, partially lost control, and bumped up onto the grass verge, just as a red postal van appeared, almost up on the opposite verge, as if it had just narrowly missed someone coming to meet it, which it had. The van halted, nearly standing on its bonnet, and the postman jumped out and ran around the bend. Omri, meanwhile, had fallen off his own bike straight into the ditch that ran along the hedge. He lay stunned for a second, feeling ditch water soaking his side. His leg had hit something sharp. Then he hurt himself, out the only way he could. Then he heaved himself out the only way he could by clutching a handful of stinging nettles, in preference to a handful of hawthorn. He was covered with mud, stings, and scratches, but he didn't notice. He stumbled along the rough verge round the bend, terrified of what he might see. What he saw was the postman hauling Gian, likewise muddy and scratched, none too gently out of the same ditch 10 yards further on. The bike was lying at a strange angle with its front wheel in the air. Seeing he was all right, the postman began giving him what for in his strong Dorset accent. "You get, young fool! What you be thinking you're doing? Nay, made me take a conk out snow. You're locking me brakes be sharp. You'd have been a gunner. All right, are you? Nothing broke?" He looked as if he might start feeling Gion's arms and legs. He was fairly dithering with shock. Gian looked shaken too. Omri struggled up to him on wobbly legs. "You okay?" "Yeah, I think so. Sorry," he said to the postman. "Get, young fool!" he said again, and took himself off, muttering. Omri and Gian looked at each other, and they burst out laughing. "You should see yourself." "What do you think you look like? Someone who just fell into a ditch." They collapsed on the grass, helpless. After a while, Gian sat up. "You realize we're late?" "We can't go to school like this anyway. We better go home and get cleaned up. Mum'll have kittens." They rose slowly and went to their bikes. When straightened out, these proved to be more resilient than their owners. They rode back to the cottage, unfortunately meeting the postal van coming back the other way. The postman scowled out of the window at them, put on speed, and accidentally or otherwise sent a shower from a convenient puddle to add a little something to their appearance. Their mother was waiting at the gate. The postman must have told her what had happened. She grabbed Gian. "Are you hurt?" "No." "There are times," she said between her teeth, "when I wish the days of serious clips round the ear were not past. You have been told 10,000 times to keep to the side. No, not a word. Get indoors and clean yourself up. And don't imagine for one moment you're getting off school." "Mum, if we go in now, we'll get detention." "Just see if I care. And why aren't you wearing your helmet?" Gian fled. She turned her attention to Omri. "What happened to you? Did you jump into the ditch to show solidarity?" Omri was beginning to feel the stings on his hands and various other aches and pains apart from the scratches rather painfully. "I think I've hurt my leg, Mum," he said pitifully. She looked at it. Through the crust of mud it was bleeding in 3 places. "All right, come on. I'll look at it. Put your bike away." "Does this mean I don't have to go to school?" "Maybe after lunch." When Gian found out that he had to go straight to school and Omri didn't, he naturally set up a howl of protest. "At least I was knocked off my bike, practically. Omri just fell off. It's not fair." But their mother was not to be moved. As soon as Gian was ready, she clipped his helmet on his head and banished him. Meanwhile, she had washed and bandaged Omri's cuts and told him to go and rest in his room while she phoned the school. Omri only noticed then that the tanker was gone. It hadn't passed them so much as it must have gone further up the lane. It hadn't passed them, so it must have gone further up the lane to pump the neighbor's sludge. Omri wondered where his dad had gone when it left. In the same moment that he wondered, the obvious answer came to him. He remembered in a flash an occasion in the old house when he left Patrick alone with the cupboard. Despite his bad leg, Omri took the stairs 2 at a time. He knew exactly where his dad was. And that is the end of Chapter 6.